Hey, this is Mr. Masonette, and what we're going to do is we're going to practice solving some percentage word problems. This first problem reads that 65 7th grade students made the honor roll for the second quarter. This is 25% of the 7th grade class. How many total students are in 7th grade? Well, the problem starts off by saying that 65 of the 7th grade students made the honor roll. So the 65 represents part of the 7th grade class. And what we're trying to do is figure out how many total students are there in 7th grade. Well, it is given in the problem that the 65 represents 25% of the total class. Now, we could just use a little bit of mental math here. Because we know that 25% is the same thing as 25 out of 100, we should know that 25% is equivalent to 1/4. And anything that represents 25% of something is exactly 1/4 of that total. So we could say that 65 is 1/4 of whatever its total is. So what we could do is just basically multiply 65 by 4 to figure out what that is. So if we go ahead and multiply 65 by 4, we end up getting 260. So we would say that 65 out of a total of 260 students is equivalent to 1/4 or 25%. Now, another way that we could have determined the total is by setting up a proportion. Now, whenever setting up a proportion, I like to understand that the top is part and the bottom is a total. So we're going to put 65 on the top here out of some total that we're actually looking for. And over here, it is given that this is equivalent to 25%. So we're going to express the part as 25 and the total 100. Now that we have our numbers written into the correct position with our proportion, we just go ahead and cross multiply 165, which is 6,500. And then we take that total and divide it by the number that is across from our x value, which is 25. So 25 can fit into 65 twice, which is 50. And 65 take away 50 is 15. And we bring down a 0, and 25 goes into 150 6 times exactly. And then we can just stick a 0 right here. So you can see that we came up with another way to figure out how many total students there are in the 7th grade. All right, let's go ahead and work out another example. This problem reads that if 30% of a number, x, is 225, what is 76% of x? Okay, we basically have a two-part problem here, and we're really trying to figure out what 76% of x is, but we don't know what x is yet, so we have to go over here and use this information to figure out what x actually is. So one way we can do this is by setting up an algebraic equation. So another way to write 30% of a number x is to write 30% as a decimal, which is 0.3 in its simplest form, and write the variable x right next to it, which indicates multiplication, and the word is means equal to. So 30% of x is equivalent to 225. So we have to figure out what we multiply 0.3 by to get 225. And to figure that out, we basically do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So instead of multiplying by 0.3, we're going to divide by 0.3. And the left-hand side of our equation cancels out to just give us x. And we have to balance our equation by dividing 225 by 0.3. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So if we go to the side here and divide 225 by 0.3, we must remember that we are not allowed to have a decimal in our divisor. We have to move it all the way to the end. But before I do that, I'm going to stick a decimal at the end of this number on the inside of our division sign. And then I'm going to add a 0. Now I'm going to take this decimal and move it to the end to turn it into a whole number. And I'm going to move this decimal point one space to the right as well, and then move it up. All right, now 3 goes into 22 7 times, which is a total of 21. That leaves us with 1. We drop down this 5, and 3 goes into 15 5 times. And We have to be careful here. A lot of students want to think that they're finished with this problem, but if you still have a blank right before a decimal point, you have to stick a 0 in that place value. So we would say that x is equivalent to 750. All right, now that we know the value of x, let's go ahead and figure out what 76% of 750 is. Now, whenever finding the percentage of a number, you can take that number and multiply it by the percentage expressed as a decimal. So we're going to go ahead and multiply 750 by 76 hundredths. So 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 3 is 45. And then we're going to put a 0 here for a placeholder. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 7 times 7 is 49, plus 3 is 52. Now, if I add these digits together, we have 0, 0, 10, 7, and 5. Now, we have a decimal point in the multiplication problem, and we have 2 place values after it. So we have to go to the end of our answer here and move to the left 2 decimal places to get our final answer of 570. So 76% of x is 570. All right, now that was just one way to solve this problem. Let's go ahead and use only proportions to solve this problem. Okay, if you are given a percentage, you can rewrite that percentage as a fractional value. So we're going to write 30% as 30 out of 100. All right, now for our other fraction, we have to determine, where does 225 go? Is it going to go on the top or the bottom? Well, if 225 is a part, then it's going to go on the top. And if 225 is a total, that will go on the bottom. Well, because it is preceded by the word is, that is an indicator that it is a part. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on the top, because 225 is part of a number that is represented by x. Okay, now that we have our proportion set up, I like to start by cross-multiplying where we actually have 2 numbers, and we have 2 numbers in this direction and not in this direction. So we're going to multiply 225 by 100, which is 22500, or 22,500. And we always divide that product by the number that is directly across from your x value. So let's go ahead and divide that by 30. All right, now 30 doesn't fit into 2 or 22, but it fits into 225. Now I know that 3 times 30 is 90, and 6 times 30 is 180. So it would fit in 7 times, and 7 times 30 is 210, which leaves us with a difference of 15. We drop the next place value, which is a 0, and 30 goes into 150 exactly 5 times. And that leaves us with nothing. However, we still have a place value at the end. So we can go ahead and just write a 0 on top of it. So we have determined that x is equal to 750. Now remember, this is a 2-part problem. Sometimes students might just think they're finished and forget that there's another part to this problem. Now we have to figure out what 76% is of 750. So let's go ahead and set up another proportion. So we're going to write 76 out of 100 is equal to, now this time we have to figure out, where does the 750 go? Is that the part or is that the whole? Well, in this case, 750 would be the total, because what we're trying to do is figure out what 76% of this total actually is. We're looking for part of 750, and the specific part we're looking for is 76%. So we're going to go ahead and put an x here at the top and solve for it. So now we're going to start by multiplying 750 by 76. So let's go off to the side here and multiply those 2 numbers together. All right, this is 0, 30, and this is 42, 45. And we put a 0 here. 7 times 0 is 0, 35, and this would be 49 plus 3 is 52. And we have a product of 57,000. Now we have to take 57,000 and divide it by the number that is directly across from our x value, which is 100. Now remember, whenever dividing by 100, all you really need to do is stick a decimal at the end of your value if there is no decimal, and move that decimal point 2 spaces to the left. So if we move that decimal point from here to here, we made 57,100 times smaller. And we came up with the same answer that we did before, which is 570. All right, let's do one last example. This problem reads that at a middle school, 88 students have brown hair. There are 244 students in the school. What percent of the students have brown hair? Round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So notice in this problem, they gave us the part and the total. And what our job to do is to convert that into a percentage to the nearest tenth of a percent. Whenever you know the part and the total, to change this into a percentage, what you can do is take the numerator and divide it by its denominator. So we're going to take 88 and divide that by 244. And with this numerator of 88, I'm going to go ahead and write a decimal after it and bring it up. And I'm going to automatically stick 2 zeros after that decimal because I know that a percent is out of 100. So I'm going to put 2 zeros to the hundredths place. All right, so let's go ahead and start dividing this problem. Well, of course, 244 does not fit into 88, but it fits into 880. So I'm going to go off to the side here and see how many times it fits in. I believe it is 3 times. It's going to be 12, 13, and 7, 732. So it fits in 3 times. And I have to subtract 880 with 732. And that's going to give me a difference of 148. And then we bring this 0 down. And now we have to divide 244 into 1480. Well, I know that 244 times 3 is 732. Well, if I did another group of 3, that would double 732, which would be 1464. So I believe it fits in 6 times. So I'm going to go ahead and double 732 to be 1464. And that's going to give us a difference of 16. Now we know that our percentage at this point is somewhere around 36%. But remember, the problem told us to round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So to do that, what we're going to have to do is add another place value. So we're going to write a 0 right here and bring it down. And 244 cannot be divided into 160, so we put a 0 in this spot. And we're going to add another 0 and bring that down. And divide 244 into 1600. Well, we know that 244 went into 1480 6 times, which is 1464. I don't think this would fit in a 7th time, so let's just multiply this by 6 again and subtract 1464 from 1600, and let's just see what we have remaining here. All right, and I'm about to run out of space, so let me just write the difference over here. So this would be a 6, this column would give us a 3, and this column would give us a 1. All right. As long as your difference is smaller than this divisor, then you know that you have the right digit up top. Okay, now 88 over 244 to 4 digits is 0.3606. Now to change this into a percentage, we have to move our decimal 2 spaces to the right. Now at this point we have 36.06. Okay, because we're rounding to the tenths place, we have to look at the number to the right, which is the hundredths place. And if that place value has a value between 0 and 4, then we're going to keep this number in the tens place the same. But if this digit is between 5 and 9, then we're going to increase this value by 1. And because this is a 6, that's going to shove this value up by 1. So the nearest tenth, we would say that at this middle school, there are approximately 36.1% of the students that have brown hair.